Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashley and I know it's been quite a while since I've put out a video pretty regularly on Sunday, and super sorry about that. Things have happened and I definitely just wanted to take time to rest and recuperate and just, and brainstorm about what more creative things I could do on this channel, and I'm really excited. Today is just kind of gonna be like a melting pot of everything that I've missed. So as you can see, I did rearrange my bookshelves yet again. Some would say I have a serious problem, but alas, I am who I am. I did actually film in like a time lapse of me organizing my bookshelves, so there will be some of that, and then I kind of want to talk a little bit about books that I've read in the past month. It hasn't been a lot because, again, like I was just going through a lot, so I wasn't continually reading like I normally do, which is like on a daily basis. So I was only able to get maybe like 4 books last month, if I'm being honest. And then also I want to be talking about books that I'm super excited to read for this coming month. Well, we're in the middle of the month, so for the end of this month, going into next month. Not necessarily a TBR, because I've discovered about myself I rarely stick to TBRs. But if you stick with me, we're just gonna kind of backtrack to the past and you can watch me reorganize my bookshelf. See you there. Well, welcome back. I really hope you enjoyed watching me stress about where books go on my bookshelf. So now we're back in real time. I want to kind of go through a few books that I read this past month I really enjoyed, and yeah, so let's get right into it. All right, first book that I read was We Are the Britons by Tracy Lang. I think it's Lang. Could also be Lange, but I think that it's Lang because Jessica Lang is the actress. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. Yes, We Are the Britons. Super, super cool book. I don't really think I've read much like family drama like fiction, and this was super, super good. I read it in like the span of 2 days. It was a really quick read, which I love. It is pretty small, and it's just a one and done. Like, it's not a series. Sometimes I need to take a break from my series. Just read a standalone. There's nothing wrong with that. I read We Are the Britons, and this basically follows an entire family, but it does start in the perspective of Sunday Britton, who is the only daughter in this family. And she was kind of like growing up, she was like the golden child, and kind of just took care of everything and everyone. And something happened, and she completely fled. Like, she left the state. This takes place in New York Sunday, and she refuses to tell anyone about it, so she leaves New York and goes all the way to the West Coast and is living there for I think 4 or 5 years after all this happens. And one night she gets really drunk, and she ends up blacking out, and she ends up in a hospital, and it turns out she went drunk driving and got into a car accident. And she has basically burned bridges with all of her family, but she forgets that her emergency contact is her brother Denny. And something that I really love about this book is that it's not only in the perspective of Sunday, you see every single person's perspective within the family. So you see Denny's, you see Sunday's, you see their fathers, you see Kale's, who's not actually a part of like the biological family, but he grew up with them and was Sunday's boyfriend throughout their entire childhood. And I mean, she doesn't only leave her family, but she leaves him without any word, so you can guarantee that there's going to be some angst when she comes back. But basically, as she comes back, she realizes that their family's pub, because they're Irish, I don't know if you can tell by the 4-leaf clovers, they own this Irish pub, and they are having some financial issues, and you just kind of see them all kind of stress over that. But then also their father has Alzheimer's, and since the book, some of the chapters are in his perspective, it's really interesting because it's like you're looking through the perspective of someone whose memory isn't all there. So that's really interesting. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever read a book like this, and if you are down for, like, you know, that family drama, that family dynamic, I would definitely recommend this to you. It was definitely a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, the next book that I read, well, technically reread because I had read this, I'm probably gonna say, I feel like almost, I read it when we were in quarantine. So a little over a year ago, I initially read it and I was like, wow, this was really good. But then I decided to reread it and I was like, oh, that second time really just hits different. And that is Cersei by Madeline Miller. This book, I really just don't have words. I will say, do not read this book, number one, if you do not care for or enjoy like Greek mythology or Greek retellings. I just find them super fascinating. And don't read this book until you look up trigger warnings. You can look those up in your own time. But this book is really, really good, and I think that it's just such like a beautiful piece of work in regards to like female storytelling. A heroine that makes mistakes but like learns from them, and it's just super empowering to read this. This entire story takes place over thousands of years. It's about this woman named Cersei, and you meet her when she's a child. She's the only person in the story that we follow. So you are following her story for thousands and thousands of years, and just how she's treated by men throughout this entire time, how she's treated by her family, how she's treated by society, and it was just, it was a read that like, it's not normal for like me to read something like this, but this was a book that like made me think. Like, I couldn't, usually when I read like books that I normally read, it's really easy for me to just kind of skim and guess the plot. It's just, that's easy for me, that's what I like. However, this book, you could not do that. There was no like, you really had to like pay attention, because like everything was just like so powerful, and you just, it really didn't make its impact unless you are like truly focusing in on what the author is saying. But honestly, this book is just like a huge book for like women empowerment, and I really enjoyed it. That's honestly all that I can say about it without going too far into the plot. So if you guys only knew what time it is, and here I am drinking coffee. Alright, the next book that I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This book was so beautifully wholesome. I genuinely have no words. I could not believe my eyes that I was reading this. It was just so beautiful and so pure and so innocent, and you're just like, I love every single character in this book. So basically you're following this guy, his name is Linus, and he works for this company, and he's basically like a social worker. And Linus, like, his personality is very like type A, like just like he follows the rules no matter what. So one day at his job, he is pulled in to talk with the big head honchos at this workplace, and they're basically like, we see that you do things by the book and nothing else. Basically a social worker for orphanages. He goes and checks these orphanages and making sure that they're up to par. Children at the orphanages, they all have powers and giftings, and usually these kids have been abused, have been ridiculed, are feared, so they are always like super skittish and very untrusting, and just when people expect the worst out of them, they believe that they are the worst. Like that. Wow, somebody write that down. But okay, so he's pulled into a meeting with the higher ups in his company, and it was like, and they're basically like, hey, like, we've read your notes from when you've done these visits at orphanages, and we realize that you do things completely by the book. You don't let your emotions get in the way of doing your job, and we need a man like that. So we're gonna send you to this super high risk orphanage, where they put all the most dangerous kids with the most deadly powers at this orphanage, and you need to go and you need to check and see if everything is up to par. And immediately he's like, gasp. But they don't really give him much information to go off of, and so he goes and he meets these kids, and he is terrified, and rightfully so, because I can't give it away. I can't give it away, but when I read it, I gasped. I was like, no. But yes, it really took you for a spin. But Linus, being who he is, he just wants to get his job done as quickly and efficiently as possible. He has to be at this orphanage for quite a while. So during this time, like, you see him like trying to do these follow-ups with all these kids, and the caretaker at the orphanage, and his name is Arthur, and just like this beautiful relationship forms between the two of them. And then basically, like, you watch Linus go from like unconsciously wanting to take this home away from these children to actually like falling in love with every single one of these children, who have been abused, who have been neglected, who have been made fun of, who have been completely like outcast from society. Like, you see him fall in love with them, and it's just like, it's this huge like battle of wills in Linus. Like, that's, I feel like, the whole premise of the story, where he is so used to and lives his life by following rules, and these children do anything but, and he has to learn to like be okay with that and like fall in love with that. So you're just kind of like on that journey with him, and it is so beautiful. Like, I genuinely don't have words, but it was great. It was a great book. I loved it. Alright, the last book that I read was super fun because all the other ones were really emotional, so I was like, let's do a romance. So I read The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren, and it did not let me down. It was very, very different from any of the other books that these authors have written. I was very floored. but I shouldn't have been shocked. These authors have written one of my all-time favorite books, which is Love in Other Words. But yes, this book was really, really great. You are following this single mom. Her name is Jessica Davis, and she is a freelancer for companies that need to run data, need to run statistics. Like, she's super good at math. And she has this friend, and her and this friend basically get coffee and work in this coffee shop because her friend's an author, so they basically like don't have to go to any kind of office. So they work at this coffee shop every single day, and every single day at a very specific time does this man who is super off-putting and apparently like super rude. He comes in and he orders an Americano. So from that point, they just call him Americano. It's really funny. And without fail, every single day they're sitting there, he walks in, doesn't say anything, super rude. And so one of the baristas actually let the girls know, like, hey, like this guy is actually like working on a dating app. And they're like, I'm sorry, that just doesn't add up. He's creating this dating app that is, you are testing DNA to see if you are biologically like a match for someone. I don't even know. A lot of it, like science, a lot of the science in it went completely over my head, so I don't even try. What's funny is that he invites Jessica and her friend to come to the company and do a testing of who they would be matched with, because it's not launched yet. They're still doing tests and making sure that everything is working properly. So they both do this test, and it turns out that Jessica happens to be a match for Americano. And Americano's name is actually River. So it is from that point on, like, he is like, hey, like, let's try and make this work, like, because I created this whole system, like, I don't want to not give it a try. So it's really interesting seeing their dynamic together, but also with the company and doing press and stuff like that. There's this crazy plot twist in this book that I just was like not expecting, and that was cool, because usually in these kinds of books it's just common knowledge. You just expect it, you know what's coming. But I wasn't expecting like this kind of conflict, and that was really like, it was different and it was fun, and I really, really loved it. So I do recommend this book. Cheers. Okay, so those are all the books that I have read, and I just kind of want to share with you guys just a couple of books that I'm excited to read for the remainder of this month, and probably, oh my god, just choking on air. First book that I have is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I am incredibly excited to read this book because Brandon Sanderson is like the king of high fantasy writing, and he usually does more of like adult fantasy, I think, but he does have like 2 series, this being one of them, and then the Mistborn trilogy being another one that is considered YA. So this is a YA fantasy, so I'm super interested to see him his writing in YA. I have read one of his books that's high fantasy, and that was The Way of Kings, which, good lord, took me a very, very long time, but really enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll like talk more about his high fantasy books, but I really wanted to read this. So this basically follows this girl, her name is Spensa, and it's her dream to be a pilot, and the world that she lives in has been under attack for decades, and her father was also a pilot, but he died several years ago while he was deserting his team. So Spensa has had a really hard time in the society that she's brought up into, because she's constantly seen as the daughter of a coward. So you basically just kind of see her navigating through her dream and having relationships with people when that's all they expect from her. So I'm really excited to read this book. I've heard great things. The next book I really want to try to read, and I've been trying to read it for like this whole year. Like, I just keep looking at it on my shelf, and I'm just like, I have to read it. I have to. It's been on my shelf too long for me not to read it. And I really have no excuse. And that is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This has been consistently recommended in almost like every booktuber that I watch. So I just know that I have to read this book like as soon as possible. This is an adult fantasy series, and I think there are 3 books within the series, so and they're pretty thick, so I got a long way to go. In this book, we're following this woman. I think her name is Nahiri. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. I'm so sorry, it wouldn't be the first time. She is a con woman. Her skills at conning people are literally astronomical. She's very good at it, but one day she accidentally summons this like Jinn warrior, and his name is Dara. So they have to flee the city that they're in, and they literally travel like through a desert, I think, and they end up in this city called Daevabad, which is the city of brass. The book kind of shows you that Daevabad and Nahiri, like their destinies kind of like intertwine, which is really, really cool to read into. Genuinely, I don't think I've ever heard a single bad thing about the series. Like, I know I haven't given you much context on it, but just know I have not heard a single bad thing about this series. So I'm pretty excited to read it. I don't think I'm gonna be let down, but if I am, I will be honest about it. But I think I would probably honestly start with this book first. My next book, which is the last book that I have for you, is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book, again, I have seen a lot on BookTube, and I've had it for a while, so I just have this thing, I just have books for a while and I haven't read them, so I need to like get on it before I buy new books. Like, that's a problem that I have, that I'm working on. I admit to my flaws. So I'm very excited for this book. It is adult fantasy. So basically you're following this woman, her name is Paige Mahoney, and in this world, people that are clairvoyant are completely persecuted, like viciously, so they all have to go underground and they're in hiding, and Paige basically lives a double life. She is a clairvoyant and she's super powerful one at that, but also she is the daughter of someone who is like high up, who is leading the persecution of people that are clairvoyant. So it does have this crazy like family dynamic that I've heard. I don't really know for sure, but I am really interested in it. I've heard really good things about it, but I've also heard really good things about Samantha Shannon. I really want to read The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I feel like it's gonna take me a really long time to like have the courage, because it's the longest book I've ever seen in my whole life. So I hope one day I'll have the courage to be that ambitious. But for now, I decided to go with this. Again, this is a series, so it's not a standalone, it's a full series. So I'm really excited because I feel like I've taken quite a break from series, like I said before, and I'm ready to just jump back in. So very excited. All right, and that is all that I have for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope you thought it was great, super interesting. I just gave you like a lot of information. I genuinely have no idea how long this video is gonna be. If it's over 20 minutes, I'm so sorry. I think next time I upload a video, I really wanna do a video on how I annotate books. I think that would be cool. I don't know, but yeah. But hey, while you're like listening to this closing, you should like, comment, and subscribe, because that would be super great. But thank you guys so much, and have a great day, and don't forget to like read books.